We have a brush here which I've moved out of the way just so you can see the peeler plate and the label dispensing. But this brush would normally be located in a position like that. So as the label is dispensed onto the bottle, this brush actually wipes it down. And this is a fairly soft brush. You may have some bottles where you need a really stiff brush or even something like a rubber squeegee to wipe the label down. I did a project once with a milk bottle where it was a straight side, but once it was full of milk, it bulged out a little bit, and we solved that problem by using a really stiff rubber squeegee that forced the bottle back straight as we were applying the label. This machine also has a wrap belt on it. If you were doing a round bottle, it would look much the same. You would raise the top hold down belt out of position. You would use only one labeling head normally. The bottle would come through, it would get the label, the front 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch, 1 inch of the label applied to the bottle as it passes the labeling head. It will come into the wrap station, and this is just a foam rubber belt that's going to be rotating in this direction. There's a backing plate, which is also foam rubber, to absorb any ovality in the bottle. And this is just going to spin the bottle around as it goes through the wrap station and wrap the label around the bottle. If you have the top hold down belt lowered down in place when you're doing this, what can happen is, what will happen is the bottle will want to tilt. It may also unscrew the cap. So you would not normally use the top hold down on a round bottle. This is a rental machine. It's built to be as universal as possible for as many different products as possible with no modification. The back side of the machine is essentially the same as the front of the machine. The only difference between the labeling heads is that they're a mirror image of each other. Here you see the adjustment in and out for the backing plate. Now notice how solidly this is built, because you need to make sure that you keep it parallel to the bottle. Now you notice on this machine there's an emergency stop on the back side. This is a very important feature. I don't think you can have too many emergency stops, because when something happens, you want to be able to shut the machine right away. And the machine will stay stopped until the emergency stop is reset, which requires turning, and it will pop out. And on the front panel of the machine is another emergency stop, and you can see all power has been killed. That was not depressed, so it's still out. I have to press the start button, and then I have to restart the machine components to get the machine started again. On this machine, you may be okay with just one emergency stop, but on a longer machine, you might want an emergency stop at that end, also an emergency stop at the infeed end on the back side. You have one at the control panel. If the machine was longer, you might want a fourth emergency stop at the discharge on this side. Because if this is in a packaging line, to get to the back, you may have to walk around quite a bit. This label roll is 12 inches in diameter when it's complete. This label plate will hold up to a 12-inch diameter roll. If you're running high speeds and long runs, a 12-inch roll may not give you enough labels, especially if the label is long. And you may want to go to a larger roll size. The maximum you can handle here is 12 inches, because if it gets any larger, it's going to have some interferences. If you go to a 16 or even a 20-inch roll, you've got some other issues you have to be aware of. On this roll, we're just pulling the labels off the roll. On a larger roll size, we're going to have a motorized or a powered unwind. And that means we're going to have a sensor to tell us when we've got slack in the web and when we need more labels. That will turn the motor on, unwind some label stock, and then turn off. So if you do need a larger roll size, it is going to require a motorized or a powered unwind. I've changed the speed on the overhead conveyor. It's running at about 70% of the speed of the main conveyor. And what we're going to see is that the label is going to be out of position, the bottle is going to slip on the conveyor, and the bottle is going to tip over. It's not going to tip over in the hold down belt because of the square top of the bottle, but it will tip over as it exits. So, here we go. And you can notice that it's running more slowly and slipping on the bottom conveyor. The label dispensed because it thinks the bottle's already there. As it exits, it falls over. So I have now turned up the speed of the overhead belt conveyor to about 130% of the lower conveyor, main conveyor. We're going to run the bottle through. Once again, you can see it slipping now forward on the main conveyor, and the label finally dispenses way after the bottle has passed. We now have the labeling head set up about twice the normal speed. As the label comes out, you can see that it's actually trying to push onto the bottle and does not lay down. What we are actually getting as the label dispenses is an effect like this, but because the back edge isn't laying down because of the stiffness of the label, we're not getting this bubble that we would with a thinner or a longer label. This is strictly due to the labeling head dispensing the label faster than the conveyor. The linear speed of the conveyor, labeling head, and overhead conveyor all must match exactly. I have now slowed the labeling head down to about 50% of the speed of the conveyors, and you're going to see what happens when the head runs too slow relative to the conveyors and top hold down. Because the bottle is trying to pull the label out of the head, but because it's not really sticking to the bottle, the label just slides on the bottle and winds up flagging off like this. This F-style bottle would normally be full of oil and would have a cap on it, and it's probably going to be heavy enough, especially if you're running at slow speeds, around 50-60 bottles a minute. You really don't need the top hold down. If you don't have the top hold down, the speed of the label dispensing becomes even more critical. As we will see just now, we're going to run through. The labeler is still set at about 50% of conveyor speed. This bottle is empty and lightweight, so we just pulled the bottle out of position with the label. If the bottle had been full, it might be heavy enough, there might be enough friction on the conveyor to where we would actually pull the label off of the web which would mean we'd create slack in the web. It would then snap back and could break the web, which would stop the labeler. You'd have to shut down, you'd have to rethread your label web.